I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Monroe County Election Board for February 4th, 2021. Members present are Carolyn Vanderweel, the board chair, Hal Turner, the Republican member, and Nicole Brown, our board secretary and county clerk.
Nobody's here.
And we have one item to add to the agenda at the beginning, and that's the approval of the minutes for January 7th, 2021, which were sent out by Sherry Morris in her always capable way. Does anybody have additions, corrections to the minutes?
None.
I do not.
And nor do I. In that case, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of January 7th, 2020.
So moved.
Is there a second?
There is a second.
Okay. In that case, I vote aye. Hal?
I vote aye.
And Nicole?
I vote aye.
All right, moving on to agenda item number 1. The issue of electioneering at the polls. Hal, you did some follow-up on this, and can you tell us what you found?
I have spoken to the person who filed the complaint, and they felt that this was in violation of the rules and of the election statutes, but they did not recall the name of the person who committed the violation. I've spoken and interviewed several other people who were present or nearby or came in contact with this incident, and none of them know the name of the individual.
Mr. Hal?
Yes?
I feel that on a previous meeting, we were told, the election board was told that they had the information for this voter.
I've not been able to find it.
And the persons who were involved don't have that information.
Right. The people who were directly involved with the incident at that time do not have the information. We know the town the person came from, but their party chair does not know, and our records don't show the name of the person. However, this is an incident that cannot be tolerated at any point in the future. And I think as a board, having fallen on my sword already, I think as a board, we can make a very clear statement for any future transgressions that this will not be tolerated and what the actions will be if it is done again.
So just to reiterate, this is a Class A misdemeanor under Indiana law. While we cannot prevent a person from doing so, and we will allow them to vote if they insist on doing it, once they have been notified that they are potentially committing that misdemeanor, and should they wish to continue doing so in the future, we will make sure that not only do we have the written complaint, the information that we need to file, but we have already talked with the prosecutor's office, and they will be very happy to follow up with us on any of these complaints. We can show off our campaign favors all over the county. I don't believe that the 5 minutes it takes to vote requires doing so within the chute. And I think that from now on, we will say, if you do it, we will refer you to the prosecutor and they will prosecute you.
Absolutely. I believe we are all in agreement with that. You're tying our hands. If you do that when you know and you've been told, you're tying the hands of the election board, and we wouldn't have any choice but to turn the matter over to the prosecutor for investigatory and prosecutorial efforts. And when we get to the legislative part, you'll find that there is legislative language to address electioneering in the chute.
Absolutely. And I'd like to add that we're not putting to rest the previous incident. We'll continue to interview people to try to find who this individual was so that we can take action perhaps at the next meeting. But we've interviewed everyone we can think of who was present at that time. And while there was a complaint filed, the complaint did not include the name of the person. So we'll do our best to continue to investigate this and try to uncover that information.
Yeah, I think we can develop or put down on paper a policy of how such actions should be treated in the future, not
Mhm.
only if it happens at Election Central, which fortunately we did have, our election supervisor was there, handled the issue with her usual aplomb. But we do need to have a written complaint and all the details should this happen again. And so that our poll workers and inspectors also understand how they should deal with these. We can put that into writing and maybe present that at the next meeting.
Yeah, Carolyn, to the best of my knowledge, we've never had an incident like this that I can
No.
recall.
No, I've had people who have worn, election paraphernalia into the office, but we've never had anybody who has refused to take it off while they were voting. To my knowledge. Now,
Yeah.
it may have happened that I don't know about, but this is the only situation where we had this person insisted that he had the Supreme Court decision right in his pocket, which turned out to be the wrong Supreme Court. And it's not a violation of your free speech to not wear campaign identified paraphernalia into the chute while you're voting.
Right.
Um,
And
that
I
has
want
been
to,
determined.
yeah, I want to apologize to the board for not having been ready with the correct information for this. I was chair at the time and the responsibility is mine.
I think there were multiple pinpricks, Hal, again. And again, it's the first time we've dealt with it, and we will be prepared to deal with it if it happens in the future.
Amen.
Anyone in the public out there want to comment on this before we move on? All right. Moving on to number 3 on the agenda, CFA 4s. I'm going to table the Valerie Houghton discussion until next month because I still need to talk to some people. Judge CFA 4s are a bit weird because judges have different rules than other campaigners. Judges can't handle money and rely more on their treasurers. But I've talked to Judge Houghton. I have not had a chance to talk to her treasurer, and I'm getting a couple of different lines of thought about what happened. So we'll table that one until the next meeting. To my knowledge, Karen, from all the emails that you sent us, the other pre-general CFA 4s were all resolved.
With the exception, yes and no, but we have Marcia Lovejoy with us. And yes, hi, Marcia. And she was delinquent in the well, that was the pre-election, not the annual. And so she is here to stand before you of what you want to tell her and what she wants to say to you.
Okay. Marcia, why don't you give us your side of the story to start with?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I'll first say this is my first time having run for anything, and it was a bit of an overwhelming experience, and I'm also really glad that I did it because I learned a tremendous amount, not only about myself and our community, but also I was very impressed by the way that the election process worked in the county. And I'm not just saying that because I'm here. I had told many people about how I had no idea. And so I was very surprised and impressed. I was late on my pre-election CFA 4, and it's because I tried to do too much myself, honestly. I was my own treasurer, and like I said, I'd never done this before, and I just tried to take on too much myself without asking for help. I'm a mom of 3 young kids, and I work full time, and I just asked for help. And I apologize that I know this is something that you all should not have to deal with. It's pretty simple to hit a deadline, so I apologize that this is even on your radar.
And so I do have her pre-election. She did file it, and I have it for January 14th, that I believe yes, January 14th. And so right now, I think we're all up to date with Marcia.
So, couple of thoughts here. You know, I've been dealing with CFA Force now for a few years, and for a few years before that. Campaign finance can be complicated, particularly the higher office you're running for. The more money you have to collect and the more things you have to deal with. I think having a treasurer is always a good idea for most campaigns, except for the minimal ones. And even for those, if you can find a friend who can help you, 2 eyes are always better when they're looking at the calendar than one. And your situation, of course, is one of the reasons that we developed the policy that we did, that gives, you know, first-time offenders a chance to go back and do better next time. But the other thought is that if you're running for office, and you're going to be running for an office that most likely is going to involve finances and budgets and so forth, this is probably the first step to prove that you can do that.
Yep.
So the county policy that we developed a number of years ago was that on your first offense, unless there are egregious circumstances or you just refuse to do it or whatever, that we will give you a pass. And so I'll entertain a motion to dismiss the fine.
I move.
I
that we
second.
All right. There's a motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Hal?
Aye.
Nicole?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. So there are no consequences to being late this time. But be aware that the second time you get a stiff pat on the back, and the third time around, we'll start to fine you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
The longer you stay in office, the more likely you are to have problems, and the more you have to keep those deadlines. But
If there's one thing I've learned in the past year, it's that I need to ask for help more. So that's on my to-do list.
right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good job. Thanks.
Thanks, Marcia. You're welcome to stick around or take off as you need to. Okay, other notes. Annuals. What's the situation with our annual reports, Karen?
Our annual reports, I only had 3 that were late. And that was Eric Spoonmore, first time he was ever late. And then Dan Swafford, first time he was ever late. And then they both filed on the 21st of January, which was 1 day late. And then Zach, I always have a hard time with his name. Weiss, Weisheit. You can help me if you know how to say his name.
I do not.
Yeah. I love Zach, but have a hard time with his last name. He did file January 25th. He also, that was his second time he was late. He was late in the pre-primary and then the annual, same year. He's been in here very remorseful. If you wanted him to show up today, he would have done that, but I never got a response back if you wanted him to Zoom in on the meeting. He has finalized his campaign. I think like with Marcia, it's kind of surprising for new candidates to find out how much time and the preciseness of things to do. And he was probably a little bit overwhelmed with that. He lost in the primary or dropped out, sorry. Or well, I can't remember, dropped out or anyway. So he did not go to the general election.
Yeah, and actually, if he lost in the primary, he's not required to file a pre-primary, just an annual. So,
Well, he was required to do the pre-primary. Then I
right,
think
but he
dropped
doesn't
out.
have to do a pre-general. He had to
Right.
do the annual.
Right. No pre-election, and he didn't, and that was fine. So he is now finaled and got his annual done. Whether you want him to stand before the board, that's kind of up to you. He said he'd be willing to do whatever you wanted him to do.
I don't think we necessarily need to bring him on the carpet. However, he should be aware that if he runs again and gets into trouble, that will be his third offense.
I think he's very aware now. Nice guy, but
Yeah.
just got it late.
Karen,
Yes.
each candidate is given a calendar of all of the dates that they're required to meet, correct?
Yes, we give them a packet and it's got all sorts of information in there, including the dates and the deadlines and phone numbers, who to call from us to the state. It's a pretty good little packet with a lot of good information in there, along with the forms. They have all of that. I just think since his was from the primary and then he didn't have to do anything for the general, I think he just really kind of forgot. So
Lost it. I will also say that Karen has been very good about sending out notices that these things are due, with the exception maybe of the pre-general this year when she was just a little bit busy. I think that's the first time we actually haven't sent out reminders.
you're right.
But yeah, it's inherent in the process to know what those details are. All candidates are given this booklet with all of the information. I would also mention that the state has a nice little thick booklet on finances, which you can obtain from the Secretary of State's office on their website. I think they run about $10, but it's a pretty useful book to have, particularly if you have a more complicated campaign and need to know how to deal with those things. And they're actually online too. You can get the booklet or you can download it from the website. And I'm not sure if you download it, that might also be free if you actually get the physical copy. Then there's obviously a fee for having printed it, but it's well worth having. And again, particularly if you have a more complicated situation, getting one for your treasurer is a really good idea.
Also with Zach too, that this happens very often, probably with the newer candidates. They have their brand new email that's for their candidate. And then that's the only email that I have. And then I'm sending it to them. And then he kind of drops off thinking, I'm done with this. So that was the primary. So he's never checked that. He didn't close the account, the email account, because it didn't come bouncing back to me. But it was just that connection in his own mind of, oh, I have to do something more with this. Yes.
Hal, you're muted.
Can we provide candidates with the possibility of including both the ongoing email and their campaign email on the form?
When they come in, we can ask for that. I mean, when we have seasoned ones, they don't really have that problem, but then they kind of know, although
Right.
Eric Spoonmore, he really got 3 notices and somehow or another he still missed it. They all got 3 notices this time for the annual.
Okay.
They got 3 if they kept missing it.
Yeah. I'm just looking to close any possible holes in our process that might eliminate some of this in the future. And if we get an ongoing email trapped, as well as their campaign email, then we have, I think, a little better chance of keeping in touch with them after they lose or after they dissolve their committee.
True. And then technically, everything that I do for this is all complimentary. There's no requirement for us to even remind them. But I just think it's helpful. If I were the candidate, I would appreciate a reminder.
When I was a candidate, that's why I got my things in on time. Those reminders. Yeah, absolutely.
And you would be, I don't know, I'm no longer surprised by any of these things, but the number of people who said, oh, yes, I got that reminder, but it didn't apply to me, so I didn't do it. We send out the reminders because it does apply to you, obviously. This year is one that actually traps a lot of people because nobody does anything this year. And then coming along next January 20th, you'll all need to do an annual report again. So that's the one I think that traps most people, is if you're not running for anything, you didn't do anything. And then all of a sudden there's an annual report that's due when you didn't have the previous ones. So that's a big one. The parties also provide resources for, at least the Democratic side does, and I'm sure the Republican would as well, can give a lot of candidates help with these things. And then the third thing is, if there's no reason to keep your campaign finance committee open, obviously if you've got a big stack of cash that you're saving for the next one, you don't want to close it. But if you've got a few bucks in there and nothing to do, even if you plan to run again, go ahead and close the account at the end of the year that you run and reopen it when you have to run again. There's no reason that you have to keep those open. And it doesn't make sense to run the risk of being late or forgetting things in those situations. They don't have to stay open because you're in office or because you plan to run again in 4 years. Close it out and open it again when you have to.
When I send the reminders, I do try to explain to them that if you think you don't owe me one or something else has happened, please, let me know, because you know what, I could have missed that they were finalized or whatever. I mean, sometimes errors happen. So I always like them to ask me. And sometimes I do get questions of, do I really have to do this? And then I can clarify that individually. Sure.
Okay, I think the only other, so there was also a Shelley Yoder. Was that in the pre-general that she was late? What you notified us about?
Her annual, she was late on that one for the county.
Yeah.
And yes, and now she's opened one with the state, and she didn't send me that information, which again, that's complimentary. And then when I talked to her treasurer, which I think is her husband, Josh,
Berry,
her
yeah.
husband, then I got them all. I got everything that she had done before. So it's everything in her file. It's just nice to have that, but again, not required. So she was late with her annual for the county.
Okay. And that has been finalized now as well, because
Correct.
obviously does not apply anymore. So I guess that one we will also need to have a resolution to waive the fine. That's her first offense. For that, and from now on, of course, it's the state's responsibility to deal with her paperwork as long as she remains a state senator. So I'll make the motion that we waive the fine for Shelley Yoder's late annual.
I second.
Report. Any further discussion? In that case, Nicole, your vote?
Aye.
Al?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. So Shelley is off the hook, and now off of our plate.
I do have another one. I kind of forgot about him. He's been was disbanded committee, finalized March last year, 2020, Ryan Maloney. And then we find him, or you, sorry, it's not me. I just feel like I'm this whole thing here, so sorry. You find him $100 And I have tried to find out if he's paid it, because he could pay it up at the Justice Building, but they don't have it. We've never gotten it. But he has moved. He's not in Bloomington anymore. He's in Plainfield, Indiana. So I don't know if we just want to close the book on that one. And if he moves back and opens another campaign, we go from there, another committee. Or what would you like to do with him?
Well, I think at this point, we still need to notify him. He should pay the fine, or prove that he has done so. And I know that you found an address for him, so I believe that we can take care of dealing with that. I'll draft the letter and get it to you so we can print it on county
Letterhead.
letterhead.
Sure.
Thank you. That was the word I was trying to find. And we'll send that out certified, and we'll get an answer back one way or the other.
Okay.
But I do believe if the fine was assessed, that it ought to be paid, and it wouldn't be fair to those who've already paid their fines to allow people to skip town unless they went to Mexico and we can't find them. So I will deal with that. That was the last thing on my list that I hadn't brought up. So anything else? Let's see. So do we still need to vote on Zach and Eric? And there was one more, right?
Shelley?
Shelley
Kathy Smith.
did.
So we got Marcia, Shelley,
Who was late on the annuals? Was Zach,
Eric,
Eric, and who? There was the third one.
Dan Swafford.
Dan Swafford. And they have all now filed their paperwork or not?
Correct.
Okay. And they're all first-time offenders?
Zach is the second time.
Zach is second, Eric and Dan are first times.
First time, yes.
All right.
Dan's twice.
So, and then Shelley was the fourth that was late, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we've already voted on her. So,
No, you haven't.
we can make the motion to waive the fines for Eric and Dan as a first offense and for Zach as a second offense. Again, with the knowledge that they shouldn't do it again. So I will make that motion. Is there a second?
I will second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, I vote aye. Hal
I vote aye.
and Nicole.
I vote aye.
All right, I believe we're caught up with the exception of Judge Houghton, which we will table till next month.
I think
And-
Kathy Smith is outstanding for the October 16th report, CFA 4 report also.
Hers, oh gosh, hers was interesting. Sorry. So she said that she had mailed it in, but I'm understanding that she mailed it to the Justice Building. I don't know why that happened. And then this is the pre-election one. Is that the one you're talking about? Okay.
Correct.
And then the Justice Building got it and sent it back to her. I don't know. So yesterday, actually, she came to my office and gave me the copy of hers. You know, it's not stamped or anything, but because she didn't know if she could find her copy, but she kept a copy and sent it in. And then it was, oh, actually, this is probably the one that was mailed because it is folded. And so I do have it, not stamped, but in the meantime, she has filled another one out so she was late with it.
Did she
Okay.
include a date on the one that was mailed in?
Yes, on there, it's 10/9/20, so it was within the time.
And probably would have been within the time if it was mailed as well.
Right. Well, let me look. I can't remember the date. Actually, she has a note on there, mailed the 15th, even though she signed it the 9th.
Okay. And it was
Mailed on the 15th and the due date was the 14th?
16th.
16th.
Thank you. I couldn't remember.
So it might not have gotten there in time, but we can't know one way or the other. I guess I would give her the benefit of the doubt that she did mail it, although it would have been nice to have had the envelope that that got returned as well. But I'm not going to try to rethink this.
And it's her first offense.
It's also her first offense. But we're settled now, and she was on time with her annual.
Correct.
All right. So I'll make the motion that we waive any fines associated with the late pre-general CFA 4 for Kathy Smith. Is there a second?
I will second.
Okay.
Uh, Okay. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none. Hal, your vote?
I vote aye.
Nicole?
I vote aye.
And I also vote aye. Okay. I believe we're now up to date with the exception of the Houghton issue, which we'll deal with next month. And then Ryan Maloney's fine, which I will follow up on, and hopefully we'll be able to give a report back on in March as well. Anybody else have any other CFA 4 issues?
Just one comment on the first issue we dealt with, which was the violation of the chute.
Yeah.
We have 1 year to bring up charges, do we not?
Actually, I believe it's several years.
Several years.
I
Okay.
don't remember exactly what he told me, but it was, it might even be up to 3 years to deal with it. So, but certainly
Okay.
one is
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
okay. Moving on. Nicole, do you have an update for us on what's happening in the legislature that's appropriate for the election board?
I do. What I did is I printed off a list of, bless you. I printed off a list of bills that are currently before the legislator, and I wanted to touch on a few of them that would be relevant to elections. Before I say anything, I'll say that some of these bills come up every legislative session. Some of them you'll know as being pandemic driven. And then some of them appear to be brought up by the current events of the day. So when I read them, I don't want you to assume that every bill was brought up by the clerks or something, because it could be that the clerks brought it up and requested a bill. It could be that the Secretary of State requested a bill. There are things on which the Indiana Election Division will testify as to how it impacts them, and also the Association of Indiana Counties represents various elected offices. I think we're about a week behind because the governor made a decision to close the State House the week of inauguration. So where I would have been going the day before the inauguration, there was no testimony at the State House that week. So I've gone the last couple of Mondays, and we're waiting for the schedule to drop for next week. So I'll start with the House bills. And also I wanted to say no bill has been passed yet. There have been some votes, some amendments, but nothing has passed through both houses. We're still pretty early in the session. So if you hear something that is of interest to you and you want to call your legislator, get new language, get an amendment, there is still time to do that. And so you may also hear some duplicate bills. There are some that are written on the House side and also on the Senate side, just to make sure that bill goes through in some form. And I'll try not to duplicate and just tell you where we are. So the first one, House Bill 1133, is a bill to vote by mail, requiring that all elections be conducted by mail, beginning with elections in 2024. And it is also requiring an interim study committee on elections to study the transition to a vote by mail system, and propose necessary legislation to accomplish the transition. That was referred to the House Elections Committee. House Bill 1134 is regarding the nomination of candidates, providing that a candidate for U.S. Senator, Governor, Presidential Elector, or alternate Presidential Elector nominated by a convention or by a petition of nomination must have a petition signed by at least 4,500 voters of Indiana, including at least 500 voters from each congressional district, requesting that the candidate be nominated. House Bill 1195 is straight ticket voting, removing a voter's option to vote for all candidates of a political party or an independent ticket at one time, commonly known as straight ticket voting in a general or municipal election, except for candidates for presidential elections. And I believe that there is a Senate bill on the other side for that. House Bill 1216 is a bill for ranked choice voting for local elections, permitting a municipality to implement ranked choice voting for all of the municipalities' elected offices. It's hard to say. Moving on to House Bill 1288, election security, providing that a voting system must include votes stored as a whole number without the use of decimals or fractions. I don't want anybody to be alarmed in Monroe County. We have never reported out on votes in anything but whole numbers. So something's going on in some other county, and I would not take that as a fire alarm in Monroe County. House Bill 1290, it's establishing a commission on election integrity, and that was referred to the House Elections Committee in apportionment. House Bill 1301 is a bill for same-day registration, and I believe that there is one on the Senate side for that as well. House Bill 1330 is a bill for automatic voter registration. It provides an application to obtain or renew a motor vehicle driver's license or permit would also serve as a voter registration application unless the applicant expressly denies on the application to register to vote. House Bill 1357. I thought it would be of interest to you. Clerks are asking that certain individuals who are not eligible to vote because of their age, which means our 16 and 17-year-olds, be allowed to help us as election officers during early voting and election day. I'm sure everybody on this call knows that we use our 16 and 17-year-olds on election day, and we love them. We love getting them into the process. This would align that language for early voting and election day. So if we're still working into the after school hours, or somebody wants to do an internship or something like that, that we would be able to use our 16 and 17-year-olds. It is one also where we are asking for our schools to continue to serve as polling sites. And I believe that there is some language requesting that either school be closed that day or that whatever part we're using for a polling site be where no students are in that area. So if we're using the gym, there would be no gym class that day or something. I'm just choosing a location, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. House Bill 1365, it is updating statutes for upcoming elections, defining things like de minimis change, which I don't know what that means, electronic poll book. It would just give definitions for those. Requiring the accurate presentation of a candidate's name, including the use of a pronunciation symbol such as an accent mark. Providing that the precinct judge performs the duties of a precinct election sheriff when the position of an election sheriff has been omitted by the county election board, or when a county vote center does not specify who performs those duties. It provides that a poll book holder or watcher must be a registered voter of the county. It requires the cancellation of a voter registration record of an individual reported to be imprisoned following conviction of a felony in another state. Permits a county election board or a board of election and registration to authorize a voter to cast an absentee ballot before a traveling board after the usual deadline for doing so if a local disaster emergency has been declared by the county, and specifies the procedure for an absentee board member or the circuit court clerk's office when a voter leaves the clerk's office or satellite office, or they decline to return to the booth without casting an absentee ballot. That kind of sounded awkward, so let me talk about that. There are some counties where if you don't hit the red button to show and prove that your vote has been cast, there are some people who leave the voting booth without hitting that red button. So clerks have requested, and we already do it on election day, they have requested that a bipartisan team be able to go, you first make an effort to get the voter back and let them hit the red button for their own ballot. But if they say, no, I'm not coming back, or they get away before you can get to them, then that bipartisan team would go up and hit that ballot and cast it on behalf of the voter. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All righty. Moving on to that, there was quite a lot in that bill. Sorry about that. The next one is House Bill 1485, and it concerns voting matters. It defines the breach of peace and law enforcement officer for the purposes of election law. This was also recommended by a clerk, an Indiana clerk, not in Monroe County, to align the definition of electioneering so that election day mirrors early voting. Unfortunately, there were some counties where there were people trying to do some electioneering within the chute. And when the clerk tried to have them move out of the chute, they challenged them that there was no language for electioneering with respect to early voting. It was simply an oversight. And now we're just going to align that language so that there is no question whether it is early voting or election day. You cannot electioneer within the chute. House Bill 1504 is a bill for the elimination of straight ticket voting. Yes, I know you heard two different House bills for the elimination of straight ticket voting. These are authored by different people. That's the only thing that I can guess as to why we have that. Sorry about that. I see you laughing at me. All righty, moving on to the Senate side. Senate Bill 173 regarding the prohibition of firearms at polling places would prohibit a person from carrying a firearm in, on, or near the chute, polls, any areas where voters congregate or are likely to congregate, and any room where ballots are being counted. And it would provide that this offense would be a Class C misdemeanor, but they are trying to enhance it to a Class A misdemeanor if the person has a prior unrelated conviction for the offense. Senate Bill 182 is about filling vacancies, providing that in order for precinct committeeman or precinct vice committeeman to participate in a caucus to fill a vacancy, that committeeman or vice committeeman must be entitled to vote for the office for which a successor is to be selected in the caucus. And this makes a technical correction. I'm almost done, guys. Thank you. On Senate Bill 260, that is various circuit court clerk matters, providing the same thing. Anybody who is not eligible, our 16 and 17-year-olds, may also serve as election officers on election day or before during early voting. So this is the Senate side of that House bill that I read to you earlier. And this is also like the House bill establishing a procedure for casting a voter's ballot at an early voting site if that voter does not complete the procedure for casting the ballot, that we can do that on behalf of that voter with a bipartisan team. Senate Bill 299 theft by public employees provides that in a court order, in addition to any criminal penalty imposed, a public servant may be imprisoned for at least 30 days if that public servant is convicted of the offense of theft of public funds from the public servant's employer having a value of at least $10,000. And this is something that may not be suspended and does not count toward good time credit. Let me back up to Senate Bill 291. It's for early voting, and it requires a county election board to establish at least one satellite office in the county for an election. I cannot imagine that that doesn't already happen, but rest assured it happens in Monroe County. Senate Bill 353 requires an individual to show proof of citizenship to register to vote. Senate Bill 398, same thing. I don't know why we have two Senate bills. They are different authors, but it is allowing for a person who is 16 or 17 years of age to serve as a precinct election officer. Oh, I'm sorry, here's the language that's a little bit different. Without the written approval of the school principal if school is not in session on election day. It's also requiring counties to mail absentee votes. I'm sorry, please excuse me. Requires counties to mail absentee ballots by non-forwardable mail and specifies the list of household family members who may assist a voter in voting absentee. Requires a county to compare signatures upon receipt of an absentee ballot and specifies that procedure. And it extends the time in which an absentee ballot must be received on election day from noon to 6 o'clock if the county uses electronic poll books or is a vote center county, which Monroe County is an electronic poll book county. And that, my friends, will do it. Do you have any questions or want me to reread anything? That was quite a lot. You're on mute, Miss Carolyn.
Sorry, yeah, I'm going to have you reread the whole list.
Really?
Absolutely not. However, would you provide that list to Sherry Morris to include it in the minutes of this day's meeting?
I don't mind to provide it to Miss Sherry at all. I want to tell you though, we get an updated list every week. And so this, when I hand this to Miss Sherry, it's only going to capture where things are with the bill as of January 26th, which was the last time we got a printout. It changes as amendments are added and testimonies given. And so.
Exactly, but it'll give people a list that they can follow up and look up online. So
Sure. I can do that.
we can include it in the minutes with the knowledge that it is appropriate only up to date. Some of those bills will go away. Some of those bills will get moved forward. Some of those bills will get changed, as we all know how the process works. So.
Right. That's exactly my point. But yes, I'll take care of that. I know where Miss Sherry works.
Yeah. And Ms. Nicole, could I ask, is it possible if there are any members of the audience on today's call who would like that complete list, if they could ask you to mail them the current list?
You can ask. I would be happy to do that. I think it would not be the best idea to marry yourself to this list because it changes so much. But if you feel strongly, Mr. Howe. Then
could we ask that it be possible for them to request from you the link where they could get the most up-to-date list?
Sure. Now I'll tell you where I get the most up-to-date list is the Association of Indiana Counties because they lobby for us. And so I don't know if just anybody can go onto the AIC website and pull that down. We belong to that as the Clerks Association, and I get them also because of chairing the legislative committee. but that's where I get my up-to-date list from.
One thing you can do is to go to the actual website for the Indiana legislature. They have a bill tracker function, so you can plug in any one of these numbers and actually get updates sent to you.
I'm just looking to provide as much information for voters as possible.
Absolutely,
To me,
absolutely.
the bill numbers then will allow people to go and further follow a bill that they might be interested in, and that's the only reason that I want it included in the minutes.
Right.
And which would also make, just sending the list out to somebody by email, they could then plug that bill in and find out what's happening with it and who they need to contact if they have a comment to make about the bill and so forth. So,
Right.
but the legislature website is very useful for tracking bills, for knowing who's on a committee that you need to talk to make comments on bills, or if you want to testify. So this is basically the reason I wanted this list, was that people could know what's out there and then do their own follow-up.
And I'm sure I don't have the most comprehensive list. I always request a list of clerk bills. So there are a lot of bills out there. I just plug in the search engine, Indiana General Assembly, and try to just make sure I'm on the one for the session, the 2021 legislative session, if that helps anybody who is more technically savvy than I.
Nicole, this is Jim Faber. Just send the list of house numbers and Senate bill numbers to Marge.
Well, I can't say no to you. You are my favorites. I can't say no to you. So just don't marry yourself to this particular list, because it will change. But of course, we'll figure it out.
I agree.
Thank you.
Get us off. You just.
Any further comments or public comments?
I have something that I wanted to mention, which I just thought of today. Nothing about the legislative, so are you ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hold on.
So believe it or not, our next election is kind of in a year. If we're a year from now, it'd be February 2022, and we'd be getting high gear for the primary midterm. So my question or thought is, are we going to have a satellite? And if we are, then we really need to seriously think about location, unless we aren't going to do it. But I know there's been a lot of talk about that thrown around into the 2020. And I just know that our time does go by faster than you think. And I don't think it's too early to start at least considering what we want to do. I keep saying we. You guys make that decision.
You are part of the we.
The royal we, right?
Yeah.
Ms. Karen, I think the fairest thing to say right now is that, we learned so much in 2020. Oh, my
Yes.
goodness. And nobody, I don't think there's any one of us who would want to go through the kind of year that we did, trying to oversee elections in a pandemic. We continue our discussions regarding the space constraints that we have at the Johnson Hardware building, and we have made the people who represent us know, we have put them in remembrance that we cannot continue under these constraints. And so I'd like to see those talks play out. Certainly, I agree with you. We need to have discussions, because we certainly want to be on the right side of planning for the upcoming election. But I would also say that this is a chance to continue to put the commissioners and our council in remembrance. And I have, to the best of my ability for years, brought this up, to put them in remembrance that we simply are under space constraints that are untenable, so that we can get the Johnson Hardware building. Thank you.
That would be my ideal thought. So I'm totally on that page with you.
Also, I think our anticipation of the new census data could play into this, and it could be part of the discussion we have as far as precincts or whether we incorporate different ways to vote. I think all that is going to play off of the new census data when it's available, and that is expected to be third quarter, I believe.
Yeah, the latest information is that the preliminary data will be released April 30th. And
Okay.
from what I've understand is that the House is, or the Secretary of State's office is telling us we're looking at maybe August before we get any of that going. And so obviously redistricting issues are a big part of what we need to be doing this year. Normally we will be gearing up to deal with that sooner than later, but it looks like it's going to be much later this year, which is going to put us into a bit of a rush at the time that it finally comes out to get it done before people start getting ready to run for office next year. Especially we're dealing with township offices and all sorts of other things. One of the things, the last thing that I wanted to deal with on the agenda today is for us to do some brainstorming between now and March about the things that we would like to achieve. And again, this being an off year, it's also a time when stakeholders might approach us to put forth some ideas for what we should be doing in the future. I know, Hal, you were contacted by a League of Women Voters group and Vote by Mail group. And I was thinking that we should invite them to come and talk to us in March. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? I don't know if you have information that I do.
Yeah, this grew out of an invitation I had to present as part of a review of voter suppression and techniques to increase voter participation. And so I invited the group here to have a talk about what we might do to ensure that there is no voter suppression in any of our policies as we move forward. And that would include the possibility of precinct redistribution, or the possibility of having vote centers, or the possibility of having our current voting technique optimized for changes in population. So a lot of it has to do with the census. A lot of it has to do with voting techniques that maintain the custody of ballot, so that there's no opportunity for any vote theft anywhere in the process, or any vote collusion or anything inappropriate with our most valuable asset, which is our vote. So we should have a great discussion next month on this. I copied the rest of the board on the note I sent, which I thought was fairly extensive, but those will all be issues we'll discuss next month.
So I would actually invite all board members and all of our stakeholders, including our election supervisor and other election officers, to think between now and March about things that we would like to achieve beyond redistricting, which is our primary function this year, in order to, be up and running for 2022 as we move into the next election cycle. Nicole?
I don't have anything. Sorry.
That's okay. Any further items that we need to discuss that any of you want to talk about before we open it up to the public? All right. Is there anybody who is not on the actual list here, but is a participant who would like to make a comment? Just raise your hand and we'll get you unmuted. I see none. In that case, I would note that the next board meeting is scheduled for March 4th. Same time. I'm going to presume that we're still going to be on Zoom at that point. Notice will be sent out prior to the meeting, but it'll be 1 to 3. And if there is no further comments, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I will second that motion.
Then I would thank everybody for their hard work so far and their hard work to come. And we will see you all in March.